spending a lot of time at home, and we've been trying to make the best of that time. A lot of family dinners, which we don't have a lot during the season or during a normal time. Here he is.
Hey, Coach.
Hey guys, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good.
And then I don't know, a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago, I said, Chris, we need to go somewhere. So we had originally a vacation plan that we weren't sure if we were going to be able to do, and we just went ahead and did it, and we were glad that we did. So it was nice. We went to Hilton Head, and we've been there the last 5 years. We like it there. A lot of other Ohioans down there. So, but we had a great time. We went with Chris's brother and wife and their 2 kids, and then some good friends. We were all super good about quarantining so that we could spend the time together, which was nice. We had a great time. So now we're back and trying to figure out what June looks like.
I wish we could tell. Coach, we were just talking about how you obviously expected your April to go far differently than it did, and your March, as we all did. What's it like for someone like you when your life has been so my own experience, though, I used to cover horse racing, and the Kentucky Derby was the most important day in May by far. And when it came, I cried. Like, I couldn't fathom that my life was not what it was supposed to be. And I'm wondering what it's been like for you, especially considering the momentum part where we were moving toward in March when everything kind of came to a halt.
Yeah, it's a good question, Nicole. I think it was hard. Yeah, it was really hard. You're just it was so abrupt, and I think we were all wondering what this virus could do, and what its capabilities were. And there was a lot of, I think, concern and fear for our athletes. And when you're a coach, you're like a parent, and your responsibility is those in your charge. So we were obviously playing really good basketball and had finished the season, as hot as any team in the country, and that doesn't always guarantee anything. But we certainly had tremendous momentum, and I think had real optimism about being able to make a run in the NCAA tournament and in the Big Ten tournament. But there were more important things to tend to at that time. So.
And one of those things that none of us expected has been the direction we've headed in now. So, we spent the first 2 months so concerned about our health and well-being. And now I think we're looking at society's health and well-being. And I saw you both at the really amazing event that was held, the Kneel for Nine, over by the Horseshoe. What's been your kind of experience now and taking care of the young people that you're charged with when we have a situation like this, and it's such a prevalent part of our societal fabric? How do you kind of navigate those waters and help them through that?
Well, one of the things that I want to do as a coach is I want to have real conversations outside the game of basketball. And that's always been what I've hoped to do as a coach, and what I've hoped our program was going to be about. What issues are affecting the young people that we coach and that we're around. And as we coach a racially diverse team and makeup, and but we certainly have a large number of our guys are African American, and I think that this issue is important to all of us. But certainly it has been one that we've had conversation about really the last couple of years in our locker room. Mm-hmm. And so this certainly heightened it, and this conversation that really is about a number of things, but this conversation has been one that it certainly prompted more in-depth conversations with our team. We had one last Friday with a number of our players, not all of our players, but a number of them, and then we had another one on Monday as a team, and some conversations with parents. So I think it's been really good. It's been really good for me to listen and hear. But like I said, it was it was really, I think, valuable for me to listen and hear what some of our young players said, primarily our Black players said a year ago in the locker room when it was just us, and they were talking about their experiences around whether it was being profiled or their experiences with racism. It was so valuable for me to hear that, for some of our white players, all of our white players to hear that. We had staff who shared experiences. It was a really powerful time in our locker room, and this conversation, it just continues that.
Laura, I know that you've been involved in the Live Like Lindy Foundation, and they've been involved in so many efforts to support sports across the inner city. They're working with Life Sports to be able to continue kind of those camp efforts that COVID-19 prevented. You know, when you, the foundation work that you do, can you kind of help us see the importance of looking at sport at all levels, and especially all socioeconomic levels? And that's going to transition us actually to Seth, who, you know, came from public school and had probably a very different experience than a lot of people. But it's really something that's such an important part of culture as we know it in the public school system.
Right. So when we were presented with the idea or the of Project Play, I'm assuming that's the research study. Yeah. So when that was presented to us, I brought it to Chris. It's kind of one of my roles is to sort through the different organizations here in Columbus and beyond that we want to support. And I thought that this was a really good one for the both of us because of how Chris was involved in sport. His, you know, from the minute he can remember, he played sports. And here I am on the complete opposite side. I never was involved in any kind of youth sport program. And now looking back on it and seeing how that created or made Chris to be who he is, kind of almost a longing for that, or you know, I missed that I didn't have that experience. And so this one worked, it just seemed to work perfectly with kind of who we are and our values. And we understand we just understand how sport can help the well-being of all people, emotional well-being, social well-being, physical, obviously. And so anything that we can do to provide more access to that, we want to be a part of, and it's important to us to help support and partner in those efforts. And we right before COVID, we spent the first semester and into the beginning of the second semester trying to partner with Parks and Rec, and then also Columbus City Schools, just to see where our vision and our goals kind of align and how we can work together with those two organizations as well here in Columbus. So I'm excited to see what could happen with that. Public school has always been kind of near and dear to my heart. I'm a product of public school, and I come from a family of educators, and so that's also a passion of ours.
That's wonderful. Well, we have a question that came in about Seth and how you think he's going to fit on the team, Coach. And I was hoping we could expand that both from his ability as a basketball player and a leader, but certainly, you know, no one expected that the first time that he would really gain the spotlight would be in the way that he did. And you know, as I think I mentioned to you, Lori, my son actually went to elementary school with Seth, so we've known him for a long time, and I could not be more just. I want to say proud of him, but I hope he's proud of himself for all that he's done. And how does that kind of fit within what you were looking for when you brought him on board, and what do you hope that he brings to the team in general?
Well, he's a great addition. Seth's a great addition. He is a young man that I think has real purpose in kind of what we saw him do the other day comes from his heart, and there's a real purpose behind that, and it's a strong held conviction. And I was just really proud of him for doing that, and for his continued efforts, because it doesn't stop just with what happened on Friday night downtown. I think I think he'll be a great addition. Those that know Seth's story know, you know, he's a young man, obviously from our city here, who went to Harvard and graduated in 4 years with a degree in sociology, and became very involved in Harvard from day one um, um, with the community, with people there. He was very much engaged with the university, um, and got his degree just a couple weeks ago. So when you're a sociology major from Harvard, right, these things they really resonate with you. All the social issues that are 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 a part of our community right now. So, the biggest thing for Seth, basketball wise, is he has to get healthy. He's had some significant injuries that have kept him out of play for 2 years. So I think there's going to have to be some patience on his part, on our part, probably on our fans' part, about how quickly he can return to the Seth of his sophomore year, where he was the player of the year in the Ivy League. Harvard won the league. He had a tremendous season. But it obviously, it's the Big Ten is the Ivy League is a tremendous league. The Big Ten is obviously was the best basketball league in the country. So there'll be some degree of transition there, but I think he's going to make a real impact for us on and off the floor. Obviously, on the floor, so much of it depends on his health, but by all accounts, he's progressing very well on that front.
I'm sure that you expected the team complexion would change, obviously, with the graduations and the lessons. I'm not sure you expected it to change as much as it did. So I'm curious about that. There were some departures that maybe seemed less expected than others. It seems like the transfer portal has really affected basketball in ways that I'm not sure everyone fully expected, but maybe you did. Can you kind of help us understand what it's like as a coach when you see players entering the portal and what you saw as the off season prematurely started, and how it's going to affect things moving forward?
Yeah. I think the transfer portal, that name has got thrown around really in the last couple of years, and people kind of laugh at it because they're wondering what actually is the transfer portal. Is it a machine? Is it?
I like that idea.
Like what exactly? What they envision. What exactly is that? But for those of us that are in college basketball, we understand this player movement has went on for a number of years. I shared this from 2007 to 2010. There was one player on in all those 4 years of the final four teams. There was one player that was a 4-year transfer that was a starter, and that was a player on the Ohio State team in 2007. And then you rewind the last 4 years, Virginia's run last year and the previous 3 years, there were 13 starters on the final four teams. There's going to be over 1,000 transfers in Division I this year. So, I think as a coach, you always have a pulse of that a lot more than the fan does. So, some of it you can be, I guess, somewhat surprised about. Most of it you're not. Sometimes guys just want to play more, or they want the ball in their hands more. That's the nature of our game. Our game's different than, say, football, where, in football, in a lot of ways, and obviously we have a tremendous transfer quarterback with our football team, and there's still transfers that happen there. But in a lot of ways, coaching basketball, you kind of coach 13 kind of wide receivers, quarterbacks, running backs, because they're used to having the ball in their hands. And in football, you kind of have a center who's used to blocking for kind of the skilled positions. It's just different in our game. So sometimes guys want a little bit more. And as I've said, sometimes it works out well. I've never looked at it in one way. People have asked me about, well, there's Purdue in our league, for example, they were a shot away from the Final Four, really a half second away from the Final Four last year. Well, two of those guys that were going to be seniors, they were juniors last year. Two of those guys that were going to be seniors, who were in their top 5 or 6 players on their team, left this past year. Do I look at that as a reflection on the state of the program at Purdue? No, I mean, it's the reality of today's game. So you kind of always have to be prepared for there being sometimes there's more movement than others. We've had, in my 9 years as a head coach, we've had, relatively little movement. This year, I think we'll end up having two transfers and another young man that'll try to go to the draft.
Right.
And so I think it's part of, in Alonzo, not Caleb, but I think for, you just plan on it in a lot of ways in our game now. And I think with the new rule that will probably be passed at some point, Nicole, with at some point allowing a one-time transfer,
Right.
you probably would assume that those numbers would increase. But I don't ever kind of look at young men and I'm not angry with them. In some cases, it can end up being best for both situations and both parties. I've seen plenty of situations where that's the case, and in some cases, it's not the best move. Yeah.
Well, we have a question. Greg, you had a question about Butler. You want to ask that of Coach Holtmann?
Yeah, sure. Am I on right now?
You are.
Cool. Yeah, I was wondering, what were some of the greatest lessons you learned from coaching at Butler, sort of like a mid-major school, and how have you translated those to Ohio State?
Well, I appreciate it, Greg. Thanks for your question. Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. What year are you? What year's Greg? Is he a student?
Yeah, Greg.
I'm a junior.
Junior, okay.
Yeah.
Junior. Where are you from, Greg?
I'm from Maryland.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Lori's from Gaithersburg, Maryland.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's like 40 minutes away from me.
Oh, is
Where
that
are
right?
you from?
Yeah, my roommate's actually from there. That's cool.
Very cool.
It's a small world. What's your major?
Yeah, it is.
What's your major?
I'm finance and econ.
Oh, cool.
Okay, great. Yeah, Greg, I tell you, it's so I went to Butler. I took a really interesting path where I left a smaller Division I head coaching job when they were beginning their move to the Big East, and I would not have made that move had they not moved to what, in football it's called the Power Five. Really, in basketball, it's probably the Power Six, the Power Seven when you think about the leagues like the Big East and the AAC now. And then you have the Atlantic 10, which is on certain years a powerful league. But I wanted to make that move, but it was very hard because we had really turned around a rebuild at the small Division I was at. But Butler was a great experience. I learned a lot about, it was a powerful program and a powerful league. Many of I'm close friends with Brad Stevens, who kind of put Butler in a lot of ways on the map, even though they had tremendous success before he got there. But he's one of my closest friends before he went to the Celtics. I went there to work for a guy. It just didn't work out. The young man I worked for had some health issues. So I was thrust into an interesting position there, Greg, where I inherited a team really in October. We were picked, I believe, at that time, 8 out of 10 teams in the Big East, and we ended up. I was named interim head coach, and we ended up finishing second that year in the Big East to Villanova, and I was named the full-time head coach. And it was a great 3-year run as head coach. We went to the tournament all 3 years. I went to the Sweet 16 our 3rd year. I kind of felt like, we were on a trajectory here where at Ohio State where this team this past year, Greg, might have had as great a potential in the postseason, probably did, as any team I've coached. So I think we could have had a really good run, whether that would have been Sweet 16 or Elite 8, who knows? But anyway, I think just you learn more and more kind of how to be a better coach and how to grow when you're coaching a high caliber program. Butler sells out almost every game that they play. It's 9,200 seat arena. Basketball is their sport here. While basketball is really important at Ohio State, we obviously know that football leads the way in that regard. So it's been great private, public school, seeing the differences to both. But I wouldn't change my Butler experience for anything, particularly at the time when I was there, because they were very much a program. We were ranked in the top 25 all 3 years, and were very much competing against elite competition. So it was a great, great experience.
Lori, what's the biggest difference for you between living in Columbus and living in Indiana, and I guess in Maryland? So how do you find Columbus in general?
So that's a really easy transition to make from Indianapolis to Columbus. The two cities are very similar. Midwestern, good people. So I have found the transition to be smooth. We've established ourselves here. We've found a good church, and I love Nora's school. We have a great community. So, I appreciate having grown up in the suburban, the DC metro area. I appreciate now living in a Midwestern city. But I loved growing up where I grew up, and I can't wait to show Nora. We've been able to show her a little bit of it when we've been on trips, basketball trips, but I can't wait to kind of introduce her to my life there.
I totally hear you. Colin, you had a question too about name, image, and likeness?
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. So I think was it last week that we just finished a 3-part series on name, image, and likeness with SSI, and kind of what the changes are going to be with the NCAA. So Chris, we talked a lot about college football and the effects on that, and I mean that's what you've seen around the media too. What do you think the effect would be on college basketball, and maybe how it affects the transfer portal, which you already touched on, things like that?
Yeah, I think it's still evolving. Obviously, I think what it's going to look like exactly is going to be really fascinating for all of us to see. I think, it would have been interesting to see a young man like Joey Lane, who was a walk-on for us, but beloved for us. What would have been his impact monetarily in our program? Obviously, we know Mark Titus. Well, before that, there've been but Titus, was an unbelievable kind of legendary figure here in a lot of ways as a walk-on, and used his platform, and as did Joey. So I think it's clear some of our higher performing players it's going to have an effect, an impact, and I'm an advocate of that, all for that, and support that. And I'm excited about seeing what all it's going to look like. It's going to require probably some changing and some evolving from all of us to make it better as the years continue. But I'm excited about it, the opportunity for our players. Anxious to see what it's going to look like.
Thanks, Colin. Nathan, you had a question?
Hi, Coach. Thanks for joining us.
Sure.
College is a great opportunity to develop and prepare people for the real world. And, the football team does things like Real Life Wednesdays to help their guys for personal growth. So what kind of opportunities do you offer to your guys to develop them as people and teammates within your program?
Yeah, good question, Nathan. Thank you for it. So we have a program that we do in the summer that we have weekly meetings, and I've tried to think of a clever name for it, but I haven't figured out one quite as clever as I believe that was Urban who kind of put that together initially. But I talked a lot to Urban about that. So we began a program where we would talk with our guys about real life stuff, real life issues, and it could range from some of the core values that are important in our program that we believe kind of help our young men as they certainly in our sport and in our program, but beyond. And then we also try to bring in people that can give them an increased view of the world and what it looks like and some of the challenges. And that could center around financial responsibility. That could, we've had a number of conversations about a number of different issues, along with the job fair that we do yearly with our players. But it's a program where we meet. So normally, and this summer is going to look a little bit different right now, Nathan, because we can't meet in a room with our players. But normally we would have a meeting set up once a week with our players, a meal provided where we would work out. They would have a meal provided. We would go up into the upper level of the Schottenstein into a conference room, and we would meet and speak. It's usually about 45 minutes to an hour session. Sometimes often it's me speaking, but it's also could be a range of topics. And it's not specifically about basketball. It is about life issues that we hope challenge our guys to think in ways beyond just the game. And I think that's been an instrumental time. I think our guys have appreciated it. As long as, we have a good meal provided, there's usually not much complaining. But I think they've really enjoyed it and appreciated it. And I think that program will expand. The other thing we've done is I hired Terrence Dials, who we put in charge of really the professional development aspect of our players. How do we help prepare those young men who may not have a future in the NBA for life beyond college, both in interview prep and all the things that go into that, utilizing the city that we're in. And Terrence, that position again is evolving, but it's a major role he plays within our program.
Danny, you had a question too?
Hi, Coach. So I was wondering, with all of COVID-19 going around, I was wondering how it will affect scheduling, and especially I know you're going to Atlantis for a preseason tournament. I was wondering how the COVID-19 crisis will affect that.
Yeah, it's Danny, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's interesting you say that about scheduling, because we have had some conversations about in the coming years potentially scheduling more regionally. Listen, this COVID-19 will affect how we do things budgetarily in the coming years because of the significance economically. So we are going to try to bus when we can, as opposed to flying to certain locations. We are going to, we're going to do things that I'm sure a lot of programs are going to try to do to that can impact our program in a fiscally responsible way in light of where we're at. And some of that will include scheduling and who we schedule and where we play. And obviously this year's schedule is already in place. You mentioned the Battle for Atlantis in the Bahamas. As of today, when this is being aired and recorded, I guess, this is, the tournament is still a go. And we're still very much planning on doing that tournament and every team involved in as well. They're doing some necessary precautions, but it's really, Danny, a day-to-day. We are trying, it's very fluid. Our guys return in June, mid-June. We'll figure out kind of what it looks like. We're also taking some cues from the football team who arrived before we did. And we'll learn. The bottom line is you just want to – I'm not in a rush to get back and work our guys right now. What I want to do is make sure that we're being responsible in how we go about being together in this COVID-19 world we live in. That's our biggest responsibility, I think, as coaches and a coaching staff. So it's really a fluid situation. I'm anxious to see our guys because it's been so long since we've seen them. But I hope that answers some of your questions.
I saw Lori get a big smile about going to the Bahamas. So she's eager for that. Yes.
That's a popular one. It's not, Thad didn't do a whole lot of preseason tournaments, and I totally understand why he didn't. But we've tried to add some, and we tried to add, whether it's tournaments or games that are interesting as you know, Nicole, and I think we probably spoiled in some ways our fans last year in the non-conference early. We had Cincinnati to start the season, and then we had top 10 Villanova at home, and then you follow it up with a road game against North Carolina, and then West Virginia, who was top 25, who was just up in Cleveland. We played them. So we put a tremendous schedule together of interesting games. We want to try to do that every year just because, quite honestly, our fans' attentions typically are in really engaged with football in November and December. So if we can provide some interesting games, we want to try to do that. But COVID could change a little bit of how we schedule in the future. We're going to look at it.
I totally hear you. Cade, you had a question.
Yeah. Hey, Coach. Just curious how important you felt when you came to Ohio State to continue your relationship with Taylor University. My roommate has a lot of family that goes there, and so they're always excited for the alumni games that you host, and just curious where you got that idea from, and the value you see in that, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, Cade. I appreciate it. You said your roommate has family?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so, Lori and I both worked at Taylor, spent time at Taylor. I graduated from Taylor. Her dad was provost there for a number of years. So, we certainly have an appreciation for Taylor University. I think they have been, as they should, they were aggressive in trying to put together something where they could have Taylor University grads come for a game. And Lori, Mike Falder, they kind of put all that together. And I honestly, I just kind of try to go up there and say hello and let everybody know how much we appreciate them, and then figure out how to beat the opponent that we're going to beat. And I think one year it was Penn State when they won on the last second shot. You guys will remember that. If we'd have won that game, we'd have tied for the Big Ten championship. Not that I'm thinking about that too much, but yeah. So it's a good relationship for us, and I think it means a lot to people. One of the things you realize when you're involved, Cade, in this position, and it takes you a little while to realize when you're a public figure, there's a responsibility that comes with that. And you don't understand that, I don't think, when you initially get put into that position. And I don't think I did. I have a responsibility in how I live and what I say. And then and the blessing of that is you get at times to be a blessing to other people. I can't tell you how much, I go and I'll sneak in and out. Somebody will email me and I'll sneak in and see someone who's got a relative who's struggling with cancer or is in the hospital for whatever reason. And they thank me over and over for doing that. And I sneak in and sneak out, but they don't realize it's so impactful for me. And what a great lesson for that in life that is. It's so impactful for me to be able to do that and give that. Because, I'm just obviously a basketball coach, but to be able to brighten somebody's day is a pretty special benefit to a job like this.
And Laura, I think it in some ways it's hard for people to remember that this is a family endeavor, that, coach is the one who's out there front facing, but that this is a whole Holtmann experience and it's your life as well. What's it like to be the wife of someone who has such prominence in our community?
Well, we've been married for quite some time, so I'm thankful that we had some years under our belt before we came to Ohio State, because it is a big responsibility, and I'm thankful that we, like I said, that we had some time before he was going to, be in that position. I think we've only done it one way, and it's our whole family, and then I would even include our extended family, which is our staff and their children. That's one of the things that brings me so much joy, is to be in relationship with Chris's assistants' wives and their kids, and then obviously our team and their families. Those are the most meaningful relationships. to me. And I consider myself so blessed to be a part of it, and to kind of get to host and welcome and bring us all together. And we have a lot of fun doing that. So, there is no real separation. Our life, good or bad, wins or losses, kind of revolves around Ohio State basketball, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I love it. I love all of it.
We're sure glad to hear that. Griffin, you had a question.
Yeah, I got a few questions, but
we probably have time for one.
Okay. I would just ask, and not to harken back on this, but I just find this to be kind of a really interesting situation with Seth, like how we were talking about earlier, Coach. Usually if one of your players got detained or arrested or something like that, I would imagine that would be, kind of a shocking thing to happen, kind of a worrisome occurrence. But given the circumstances, I wanted to know what your initial reaction was to finding out that Seth had gotten detained, and kind of like when you reached out to him after you found out that happened.
Yeah, it's certainly the first time that I've ever had a player that's gotten detained where I didn't have kind of a pit in my stomach. Certainly the first time that's not happened in a lot of ways. One is I just had great amount of respect and appreciation for him speaking his heart and pursuing pursuing what he believes and holding true to his convictions. And I think, one of the things you're constantly challenging your players, and in some ways you're challenging your own self when you say these things, is, the importance of getting outside yourself on a day-to-day basis. And, I think for him, the call happened. I actually first found out about it. There was a video that was sent to me on social media, and it was a direct message sent to me, and I saw it, and I couldn't initially see what it was about. And then finally, as I took a closer looked at it a second or third time, I realized, I said, is that Seth? So anytime, and Seth and I are still really getting to know each other, but anytime you see somebody and you care about with their hands behind them being arrested, you're obviously concerned. But I was able to contact his mom and a couple people that are close to him immediately, which was around 10:30, 10:45 on Friday night, and understood that he was safe and being well cared for as he was being detained. That was the biggest concern initially, and he and I had a great FaceTime conversation. I was on vacation, but we had a great FaceTime conversation out on a porch. I just listened to him. I just really tried to listen to him. And, I initially said to him, because I'm not sure he knew what my reaction was going to be. I said, hey, I want you to know I'm not upset. I don't want you to feel like I'm upset. And I don't want you to feel like you've in any way embarrassed our program, because you haven't. As a matter of fact, I'm proud of the fact that you have done what you believe and what your convictions are. And so I think that that was the conversation he and I had. And, I hope he felt supported in that moment, because I'm sure he was a little bit anxious to hear, what his new coach was going to feel about being detained. But I really was not, as soon as I knew he was safe and well cared for, it put my mind at ease a little bit.
Well, Coach, I remember one of the first things I heard is, and this is going to be our last question, when you first came on, was you going to Blaze Pizza with your wallet open and buying food for students who joined you, and you've subsequently done that. And I think it struck me so significantly because we are kind of accused at Ohio State of being a quasi-professional environment, and that, you know, players are players first and students second, if at all. And I think you've really seemed to have gone out of your way to challenge that perception and to make the students, all of them, feel like they're part of the team. Can you help me kind of see your perspective on that and understand why you think that's an important space to occupy as a coach here at Ohio State?
Yeah, thanks, Nicole, for that question. And yeah, I think you probably, I guess you're referring to the Cane's chicken that we. It's been a yearly thing. So when I was at Butler, I went and it was during finals, I believe, and I was at the Starbucks on campus, and I just sent out a tweet and said, "Hey, I'm buying Starbucks for everybody who can get here." And my sports information director immediately texted me and said, "Hey, you might have a problem on your hands," because it was small Starbucks. It was really small. So we had this, the place almost collapsed. Everybody, the whole campus converged, I think, on Starbucks. And I think at that point it made me realize, and I just stayed in line and thanked everybody for supporting our team this year. Students are so important. I think they want their coaches to be accessible and to be people that they can engage with, and they just want that from their coaches. And I've always enjoyed that aspect of it, and I know how important they are. One of the things I did hear when I got here is from other coaches in the Big Ten is they said, well, your student section's got to get better to have a real full, great home court advantage. And I give our students a ton of credit because in the 3 years here, they have been so consistent. In year one, we had a really difficult December, but we got on a roll in January and February and March. 15-3 in the Big Ten got on an absolute roll. But in December, they could have doubted us. The next year, as we were kind of rebuilding with a lot of new faces on the roster, we had a great start, but a really rough January. But they hung in there with us, and we had and then this past year, we had another rough January, but they hung in there with us and were phenomenal down the stretch. Phenomenal, beating multiple top 10 teams down the stretch in the shot. And but more than anything, I want them to feel a part of the experience, the athletic experience when it comes to our program. And I hope they do, because they're really important.
I think they do. Coach Lori, this has been an absolute pleasure. I am privileged to be part of this with you, and I thank you for being here. Coach, we hope that we see everybody back soon on the court, and we hope that you both stay safe and well and enjoy the rest of the summer. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Nicole, and thanks for being on. I really appreciate you having us on, and hello to everybody. Stay safe out there.
Okay, guys, have a great